Wait. So I will share again. Wait. From top. So I will play the university hymn. This is actually from YouTube.
Okay, okay. But sound is not coming.
Were you able to view?
Yeah, we can see, but the sound is not coming.
Oh,
Sound is not coming.
sound is not coming. Oh my God.
No,
There's no sound, ma'am.
it has started raining heavily here. The sound is not there, sister. There is no sound, sister. Hello, hello, Teresita. There is no sound.
So, okay, sir, but hello?
हाँ, hello.
Captain was there, sir. It's okay, sir.
हाँ,
Continue session, sir.
हाँ, हाँ. Okay, sister, please start. Hello.
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 Yes.
Can we start?
Can you hear the sound now?
Ma'am, it's okay.
No, no, nothing, nothing, no sound.
Oh my God.
It's okay, ma'am.
Maybe we can start the opening prayer.
Yes, yes, please, please, please.
Okay, wait.
Probably some student could have actually sung, I thought. Live.
Yeah. Is there sound already?
No, no, no. No sound. Can you sing, sister? Can you sing?
Yes. Still no
I think that.
sound.
No, no, no sound. No sound.
What happened? There's sound in mine.
No problem, no problem. I think please sing. That would be more appropriate if you sing.
Yeah, I cannot.
Please sing, please sing.
Students, can you hear? Students?
No, ma'am.
Wow, anong gagawin ko? I'm sharing I'm sharing this from my drive.
Yeah, no.
Anybody can help?
Also, I think you should sing yourself. Is it possible?
No, I cannot because this is an indigenous and there's a translation in English only. Maybe
Oh,
you can read the translation. So I will just play.
uh-huh.
There is English translation and this is sung by an indigenous song.
That's right. That's right.
Okay.
Okay. Or what we can do, sister, let us start the session and probably towards the course of the end, we can see how we can resolve this technically instead
Yes,
of
yes.
wasting time.
Yeah,
So I
yeah.
think please start. Also, we have to see if our director, you please start. He just told to start because there is a lot of rainfall in his area and there is very poor connectivity. So in case if he is not able to join, we continue our program. He told me. Okay.
Yeah.
There is serious internet.
So I will stop here
Yes, yes.
or I
Please
will
start. Please start. Yes.
um
Yes.
okay, maybe Pankaj can help also. You can find our university hymn in the YouTube.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
Ateneo de Davao University hymn.
Okay, okay, okay. Yeah, towards the end, I think if we are able to resolve it technically, we should
Yeah.
have it. It was something
Or
we really wanted. Uh-huh.
yeah, or maybe I can just anyway there's an English translation. I can just continue this prayer. Okay? And then we'll have
Yeah,
the
yeah.
welcome address. Okay.
That's right. That's right. I think sister is finished, no? Let's start. It is coming again, sister. Hello. Hello, sister. Hello, Teresita.
Hello, okay.
Yes, yes. Please start. Please start.
Okay, okay. Wait a minute. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes. We can hear you, please. Please start. Yes.
Okay, so good afternoon in India and good evening in the Philippines. It's already 6:16 here in the Philippines. So, welcome to this online session on the significance of nonviolent communication in understanding the self. So thank you all for being here, our speakers, my colleagues, guests, and students. I am Teresita Mirafuentes, College Faculty of the Psychology Department of the Ateneo de Davao University, teaching the new general education subject, which is called Understanding the Self. So this is required by the Commission on Higher Education. This subject is an interdisciplinary which deals with the nature of identity as well as the factors and forces that affect the development and maintenance of personal identity. So this intends to facilitate the exploration of the issues and concerns regarding self and identity to arrive at a better understanding of oneself. It strives to meet this goal by stressing the integration of the personal with the academic, contextualizing matters discussed in the classroom and in the everyday experiences, thus making for better learning, generating new appreciation for the learning process, and developing a more critical and reflective attitude while enabling to manage and improve selves to attain a better quality of life. One of the major parts of the subject is to seek to understand the construct of the self from various disciplinal perspectives like philosophy, sociology, anthropology, and psychology, as well as the more traditional division between the East and the West, each seeking to provide answers to the difficult but essential question of what is the self, and the raising, among others, the questions, is there such a construct as the self? Another part explores some of the various aspects that make up the self, such as the biological and material, including the more recent digital self. And it is the goal of the subject to provide a more practical applications of the concepts and enables hands-on experience of self-care and care for others. This align with the Ateneo de Davao vision and mission as a Catholic university managed by the Society of Jesus, particularly on cura personalis or personal care and magis, do more for others. So nonviolent communication is the translation and practical application of those vision, mission, and goal of the Ateneo de Davao and the Commission on Higher Education as well. Furthermore, these also align with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goal, specifically on the goal number 16, promote peaceful and inclusive societies for sustainable development, provide access to justice for all, and build effective, accountable, and inclusive institutions at all levels. Where at this period, the UN prioritized projects and initiatives that address hate speech. In this event, we are blessed to have the people from GSDS or Gandhi Smriti and Darshan Samiti from the government of India to share with us their experiences and practices of nonviolent communication and how this contribute to exploring more on understanding the self. Gandhi Smriti is the National Memorial of Mahatma Gandhi running a course on nonviolent communication. The GSDS Director, Mr. Sri Dipankar Srigyan, will give us inaugural address. The Program Officer, Dr. Bidavyas Kundu, will give the keynote address. Other faculty members are also on hand. We are all very excited about this session. There will be time for question and answer after the presentation. Wishing you all the best and fruitful participation. May I now call the Director of GSDS to give the inaugural address. Please help me welcome Mr. Sri Dipankar Yan. Sir, it's your floor now.
Pankaj,
Yes, sir.
internet connectivity problem in the office in his place. So I think he has not been able to join. He told me just 2 minutes, 5 minutes back that he's trying and to start the
Okay.
program instead of wasting time. And whenever he's
Okay.
able to join, he will start. So I think let us start straight away.
Yes, that's
Okay.
fine.
That's right. So I think we should start our presentation so that we don't, we could have the meaningful question answer sessions also for that. So, wonderful good evening to everyone in Philippines. It is such a wonderful honor for all of us here in Gandhi Smriti and Darshan Samiti, the National Memorial of the Mahatma Gandhi, the place where Mahatma Gandhi was assassinated, to be associated with the Ateneo de Davao University of the Philippines in Davao, which is which I learned is one of the biggest cities of Philippines. We are really honored that Professor Teresita Merapuntes, who is from the psychology department of the university, actually took this initiative, and we really thank Dr. Teresita that this is a wonderful occasion for us here in Gandhi Smriti to join hands with the Ateneo de Davao University in this interesting journey of how on the significance of nonviolent communication in understanding the self. We are really thankful, and as I learned, the university is a historical university with having started in a small way in 1948. So this is really, we are endowed to join hands with you, and we really look forward to a meaningful collaboration for future programs and future sharing of ideas and information with your university and your department. Thank you, sister. Like, it is such a wonderful occasion for all of us. To start with, in fact, as we are all in the midst of this pandemic, and at the start of when we had this lockdown in India, we, Gandhi Smriti, decided to launch this course on nonviolent communication. And we are really, we are thankful that Professor Teresita actually did this course on nonviolent communication. And in fact, we we would like all the students present here to also look at this course, which is a free online course, very simple, and can be done in a few days' time. And all of everyone gets a certificate who finishes this course. So today's topic was when I was talking to Professor Teresita, and we were talking about the focus of today's discussion and interaction. It was very interesting then when she said that she is teaching this course of understanding self. So how we integrate nonviolent communication in the understanding of the self. And in fact, for your information, understanding the self is a critical element of nonviolent communication. Friends, when we as human beings think of the essentials of our lives, we think of the food that we take and the oxygen that we breathe in. Another important and critical element of our life is how we communicate, because there are hardly any moment of life when we are not communicating. As a student of mass communication, we tell that we cannot not communicate. So, communication is an extremely critical and central part of our existence. And it is something which is something very, very, very critical. If as the oxygen that we breathe in or the food that we take, it is not healthy, then we get into a lot of problems. So in this context, the role of communication in our lives is extremely important. May I request my colleague, Mr. Gulshan Gupta, to please kindly start the PowerPoint presentation. And with the first slide, we go. Yeah, Gulshan? Yes. Can we see
The presentation is on.
Okay, but
Can you see the
first,
presentation?
no, the first slide, it is saying screen sharing in progress. So
Okay.
yeah, I don't know why it takes
Yeah.
time.
No,
While you are showing the slide, let me tell you the importance of communication.
Okay, hello. Is it visible?
Yes, now it is visible. Can you kindly share the
Yeah,
first slide,
sure.
please? Yeah, please.
This is the first slide.
Yeah, now importance of our communication process. As I said, we cannot not communicate. Also, it is something very, very important. How we communicate, the manner in which we communicate, the way we communicate. It's so critical because it helps in developing either relationships or in destroying relationships. And in fact, it can either spoil a relationship or unite, different groups which are in fight with each other to unite them. Communication, it can actually offer wisdom and help to a friend or a stranger. But also, it can offer and perpetuate hatred and negativity. Uh, Sister Teresita was talking about the sustainable goals and also the realm of hate speech. Let me tell you the United Nations last year. Am I audible, please? Gulshan? Yes, Gulshan, can you hear me? Hello? Am I audible?
Yes, but the sound, there are other sounds that we can hear.
Okay, okay.
Yes,
Can
you
you
are
please
audible, but there is very much noise.
yeah, can you please kindly
Maybe the
do something? Is it better? Hello?
Now
Hello?
you are very
hello.
much clear.
Audible. Okay, 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 okay. So the importance of communication is how our communication molds our realities, perspectives, and emotions. That's something very, very important to remember. In fact, it helps us to feel more connected, the whole realm of relationship development. In fact, when we are talking about the self, when we are talking about our own ideas, it's let us pinpoint that important aspect that our communication is the reflection of the inner workings of our mind. As everything we communicate originates from the contents of the mind. When we are actually communicating, it actually emerges from the contents of the mind. So our thoughts, our ideas, our perspectives, these are all form of communication. Well, as I was telling you before, there was this echo. You see, the United Nations last year, in June 2019, with the discussions with various governments across the world, came up with the United Nations Plan of Action on hate speech. Because in today's world, there were so many issues related to the way we communicate. In fact, what is the situation? Because you see, it is because of communication we are able to talk to all the students of the University of Ateneo de Davao. If there would not have been the emergence, the hyper technological age that we are in, probably we would never have had the opportunity to talk to all of you. So as the information technology has helped in permeating use of communication tools to situations and levels which we had never thought, say, about 10 years, 15 years back. But also, let us look at the whole situation where, because of the way in which we are communicating with each other, what has brought in is what we describe as the fragmented communication. In fact, this famous French scientist, Albert Jacquot, he has talked about about the whole norm of frozen communication. He says that information sciences supplies only communication that is canned or frozen, because actually, you see, when we are communicating in this information age, it's become more mechanical. It has become more mechanical. It has become something which has, there is no soul to soul communication. And there are whole situations where people get alienated. You find how, because of the obstacles to communications, the families are collapsing. There are family systems are collapsing, relationship collapsing. There is a breakdown in the language in this information age. So these are some of the issues that are there. While on the one hand, it has really given us enormous possibilities. On the other hand, these are some of the issues that have come in. As we start this whole session, may I request all of you to kindly write in your chat box something, question that I was thinking we could share with. Gulshan, please come to that question. Next slide, I suppose. Gulshan? Yeah, yeah. So may I request all our friends from the university to kindly write on this aspect of communication. You had a fight with your close friend and both of you ended up using foul language. Does it have an impact on you? Can you everyone write in the next 2 minutes in their chat boxes their point of views? Can people write on this? You had a fight with your close friend and both of you use foul language. Does it have an impact on you? Does it really mean it had any impact? Yes. Everyone saying that it had an impact. It had an impact. Yes. 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 Everyone. Because when we are using words that are not healthy, it can be really problematic. You feel hurt. The other person can be feel hurt. There could be a breakdown in relationship. There could be something like you feel stressed out. So that is the essence of healthy communication. So again, going back to what I was telling about on the whole realm of how we are communicating in this information age, which has led to, because we are all in a materialistic spree, and because of that, we are competing with ourselves, we are competing with the world to go forward. And that is one of the major reasons why there is a problem there. In fact, there is a famous peace scholar, Daisaku Ikeda, Dr. Ikeda from Japan, and he feels that in spite of the way we are communicating, which is bringing us together, the information age, he feels the words have become devalued and degraded and are reduced to empty signs and sippers. How possibly there is some element. Hello? Okay, I continue. So, what is the need? What is the challenge? What is the need and what is the challenge before all of us? The challenge is that Pankaj, There is some echo. Please try. Okay. The need, hence, dear friends, is to revitalize human, both in the individual. It is only when immersed in words and dialogue that human beings can become truly human. What is the essence of our communication? That is touching another's heart, which brings joy in their lives. And there is no confusion or frustration between both of us. That is something very, very important. And that brings us, this challenge brings us to the enormous, pivotal importance of nonviolent communication. The way we communicate. You see, as we saw in that questions that we asked, that if we are fighting, we are using foul languages and all, it has deep impact in us, and we get stressful, we get
Hello.
our
Hello.
our family or otherwise in society. Yes, please. Yeah. What is that strategy we are going to?
Hello. I request to all the participants.
Yes, please.
During the session, mute your microphone so that others are not distracted by any other background noise. Please, I request to all the participants. Please, can you mute your mic,
Yes,
please?
participants, mute your audio.
Please.
Yes, yes. Yeah, requesting every participants to kindly
Yes.
mute their audio so that when we have question answer sessions, you can unmute your audio. Most welcome. So, Gulshan, can we go to the next slides, please? Yeah. Meanwhile, as Gulshan tries to, so that's what I have told already. I have already told you about this. We go to the next slide. Are the slides visible to everyone? Can anyone please tell if the slides are visible to everyone?
Visible, sir.
Yes.
Okay, fine. So as I told you, the challenge is how our communication ecosystem becomes a source of positive coexistence and creation of value. That is something very, very important. So in that context, why do we need a strong foundation for a non-violent communication ecosystem? In that context, we are going in this journey, and we will try to, in this session, I have already laid the foundation of why the importance of healthy communication process, we will go to the different elements of communication. In that context, first, we will see on the foundations of nonviolent communication. That is something very, very important. We go to the next slide, please. In fact, this is a beautiful quote by Buddha, and that is so apt for all of us. Words have both the power to destroy and heal. When words are both true and kind, they can change our world. Such an important aspect. Now we go to the next slide, please. Next slide, please. And this is again an extremely important quote in the context of what we are trying to say. It is the quote of Mahatma Gandhi. I object to violence because when it appears to do good, and good is only temporary, the evil it does is permanent. In the same way, when we are using violent communication, when we are aggressive in our communication process, then it is going to make permanent damage to our relationships. So that is not the best way to go ahead. Next, please. Okay, this is a beautiful quote I thought I should share with you because that again, underlines the importance of the language that we are trying to use. And this is words hold power that can be used to instigate or neutralize any given experience. They can be used as weapons, either offense or defense. We need to be aware of the energy that our language, our words hold and use them for the greater good. This is a beautiful book, actually. by Thais Mazur and Wendy Wood. Both are Americans, and they've written this beautiful book, Do Not Harm, Mindful Engagement for a World in Crisis. Now we go to the next slide, please. Okay. This is something why non-violent communication. Actually, you see, we are all communicating in our daily lives, and we think the way we communicate is perfect, it's correct. But when we practice non-violent communication, and at this stage, let me tell you, it's so important to keep it in mind that there is no fixed formula, A plus B equals to C, to be non-violent communicator. What is important in that is we need to practice, and practice has to come from the heart. We need to be inherently sincere that we want to practice non-violent communication. Here is something, a very important thing in the question of why we will learn how to reframe how we are communicating when we are practicing non-violent communication. This is a beautiful quote of Abraham Lincoln. We can complain because rose bushes have thorns, or rejoice because thorn bushes have rose. So it's the way we speak, it's the way we look at the particular thing. That is something important. Next slide, please. So in that context, non-violent communication is something, a tool that is how we are able to reframe and guide us on how we are going to speak. The language that we are using, the words that we are using, it helps us to reframe the way we have been used to speaking. So as we traverse in this journey, we will see that we will be able to reframe and look at the different ways in which we communicate when we are using the non-violent communication process. Next slide, please. Okay, next slide. Yeah. Again, the importance of non-violent communication. Dr. Marshall Rosenberg, he has been able to promote the whole idea of non-violent communication in the West. You see, actually, the non-violent communication, the whole realm of it, if we see, it emanates from a very, very Asian perspective. It's a more Eastern perspective, and it actually emanates from Buddha when he's talking about the right speech. So it is an Asian perspective, and Dr. Rosenberg has been able to take it in the Western context, and he was actually a psychologist. As you are all, most of you are students of psychology. He was a psychologist, and in the 70s, he thought that he will like to use the principles of psychology and integrate it with Gandhi's Satyagraha, and he developed his approach to non-violent communication to promote, and he had been doing these workshops for different countries across the Western region. And he says that it is founded in a language and communication with that strengthen our ability to remain human, even under trying conditions. It actually guides us in reframing how we express ourselves and hear others. Let us take, for example, say for instance, I talk to, say, one of my colleagues in a particular way every day. But if you see, sometimes it could be terse, it could not, it could be quite tough words to use sometimes. But when we are using non-violent communication, it will help us and guide us in a way. We will reframe our way we have been talking to, which is not terse, which is much more amenable, which is not hurtful, and which helps in developing relationship. It helps in strengthening relationship. So this is what is non-violent communication all about. And we go to the next slide, please. And in that, I was talking to you regarding the foundations of non-violent communication. We can skip this slide, please. The foundation of non-violent communication emanates from this 5 pillars of Gandhian non-violence. In fact, some of the great peace apostles of the recent times, modern times, like Gandhi, Martin Luther King, Nelson Mandela, all have been great proponents of non-violent communication. And we have to learn from the way they have been able to, even communicate with their adversaries in a particular way. We all need to learn. And these are something which are very, very basic and simple. Friends, let us try to see these 5 pillars of nonviolence. And I think these are so simple that these can be assimilated in our lives, and they're not very complicated at all. First and foremost, we all learn from from our childhood that we need to respect each other. Mutual respect is the fundamental thing for developing relationship. Mutual respect is the fundamental thing to see that how we resolve our differences. And friends, here, as we start these 5 pillars of nonviolence, let me tell you, these 5 pillars of nonviolence are not just for our own interactions or communications with other human beings. Here I am talking about, which is a very, very Eastern concept, a Asian concept, that is the essence of human interdependence. So, in that context, we must realize as individuals that we are all interdependent, human, nature, and all other living beings. And in this context, this 5 pillars says that we must respect not just our fellow beings, but also we must respect the nature and all other living beings. You see, as we are in this pandemic of the coronavirus, we must realize, as the other some a few months back, Professor Jane Goodall, the famous primatologist from Britain, she says that how human beings have been destroying the habitats of wild animals, and because of that, the human wild animals are coming closer together, and there is greater transmission of viruses because of that. So we need to respect nature. We need to respect all other living beings. That is the essence of these pillars of non-violence. And we must realize the inherent importance of human interdependence. So respect, and when we respect each other, we understand each other. And that's something very, very important. Because understanding each other, when we start understanding each other, it will be much easier to accept each other. That's something very important. Each other's positions, because each one of us have different perspectives, point of views. So, but if I respect you, then it is much easier to understand you and your positions. If we are not able to accept respect you, then it will be very difficult for me to understand you, or even it will be more difficult to look to see your point of views. So respect leads to understanding, and understanding leads to greater acceptance. Then something very, very critical, that is appreciation. Friends, in today's world, we are all, entrapped with negative energies and negative emotions, and that has been a real problem area because of this negativity that is all around us. And because of the negative emotions, we are not able to, because of the negative emotions, we become very aggressive, we become stressful, there are tensions both within, and when we communicate with others, then it actually reflects in our communication with the outer world. So appreciation, let us try to learn to appreciate positive things around us. Let us try to assimilate the positive things that are going on around us, and let us promote positivity around us, so that when we are positive, we can do contribute to positive things. Here again, very important when we are talking of appreciation. Say for instance, let me say that I'm very angry at my place. So if I'm angry, I will try to spurt out my anger, say on my brother or sisters or parents or children or anyone. But let us think. Let us try, if we are calm and try to see outside the window and see the beautiful flowers outside, possibly it will help us in calming down our anger. And so when we, interact, when we communicate, that whole aggressiveness will mellow down. So positive appreciation, positivity is important. And the which is a critical element in our being today. Compassion. Without being compassionate, we can't, see the feelings, the pain. fellow beings, but also for compassionate. We need to be compassionate to all the other people around us. We need to be compassionate. One of very important when it is saying that you see, when we are talking of compassion, we are talking about how it is important for our well-being. So let us see, like when we are compassionate, then what we are doing is actually it flows naturally. It is one of the important thing. And when we are looking at self-compassion, because if only when we are self-compassionate, we will be able to be compassionate for others. In fact, there is a beautiful quote by Thupten Jhupa, who says that lack of self-compassion manifests in a harsh and judgmental relationship with ourselves. We will see later when we are talking of us talking about ourselves. That is such an important thing. If there is a lack of self-compassion, it will manifest as harsh and judgmental relationship with ourselves. Many people believe that unless they're critical of demanding, they will be, failures unworthy of recognition and undeserving of love. But here the critical aspect is compassion, self-compassion. We will talk about it later when we are talking about it further in this thing. So then we go to the next important aspect. We will go to the next important slide when we are talking about the various aspects or various elements of non-violent communication. So let us go to the next communication. Gulshan, please, the next slide. The first and foremost element of non-violent communication, friend, is non-violent speech and action. You see what we are talking about, non-violence in our communication process. So here, what are the elements? The first and foremost is non-violent speech and action. And not just speech and action, but also our thoughts, ideas, and perspectives. So that means that what the words, the language that we are using, the words that we are talking, and our whole ideas of our body language. We have all studied about the importance of body language in our lives. So if it is too aggressive, then the other person is going to become very, very problematic. It will be a problematic relationship. So, but when we are talking of non-violent communication, it goes to the realm of our thoughts, ideas, and perspectives. Because as I had told right at the beginning, that the process of communication starts with our thought processes. So that is something very important. Gulshan, can you go to the next slide, please? Okay, probably Gulshan. Okay. In fact, let me share with you, friends, this is a definition of nonviolent communication. All of us, like when we talk about nonviolent communication, people say, what is the definition? What is the explanation of nonviolent communication? And we use this beautiful explanation of nonviolent communication from a very, very senior Gandhian from India, Natwar Thakurji. And he says, please mark it very carefully. To me, nonviolent communication would mean how our communication efforts should be nonviolent, how our ability and capacity to communicate not only with ourselves, but with our family and society be nonviolent in all aspects, and overall how the entire process of communication, whether between individuals, groups, communities, and the world at large, should be nonviolent in nature. So Natwar Thakurji says that non-violent communication entails not only communicate the aspect of communication with ourselves, but also the nature, but also with entire ecosystem, the people around us, the society around us. So that is the explanation of non-violent communication. So may we go to the next slide, please? Can we go to the next slide, please? Yes. He further says that this would entail a deep understanding of the art and science of nonviolence and its centrality in all its actions. It's not just verbal and non-verbal communication. Non-violent communication literacy would also include whether our thoughts and ideas are non-violent or not. That's what I said. It also entails our thought processes, our ideas and perspectives. Next, please. Next slide, please. Yeah. So this is the first element of non-violent communication. We have about 10 elements, and we will talk in the context of understanding the self. So the first element is non-violent communication means complete lack of violence in the way we say, we communicate our thought processes, and verbal or non-verbal. In fact, when we are talking of a healthy or non-violent perspective, let me tell you, when we are having a positive perspective, when we are having a non-violent perspective per se, it is a foundation for joy and happiness in our lives. Because the way we see the world is the way we experience the world. That's important. Let us mark that. We have the ability, we have to develop the ability to reframe our situation more positively, because many of us are so negative. So that is something very important. And then changing the world we see, the world in turn changes the way we feel and the way we act, which is so important. For every event of life, you see, there will be different kind of angles. For every situation that has happened in your life, there will be different angles to it. Even if there is a failure, let us, if we listen to ourselves, if we think of that, there will be different angles to look at it. There could be different dimensions to a particular event in our life. So when we look at that wider perspective, and which is positive, which is non-violent in nature, then our sense, our situation of worriness, our anxiety, our stress, it will reduce, and we might have a greater joy. In fact, here at this stage, I would really love to quote a beautiful quote by His Holiness the Dalai Lama, who says that we must look at any given situation or problem from the front and from the back and from the sides and from the top and from the bottom, so that at least 6 different angles are there. This allows us to take a more complete and holistic view of reality. And if we do, our response will be more constructive. In fact, he says that most of us are suffering from what we say as perspectival myopia. Because if there is a failure, then friends, most of us will think very, very harshly about ourselves. Hey, me, I'm always a failure, I'm a stunt, I'm so and so, so on and so forth. So that is one of the biggest problems that all of us face. And when we are using non-violent communication within ourselves, within our situations, then it will help us to develop a wider perspective to even our failures or conflicts that we might have. Because of this perspectival myopia, friends, what happens? It happens that we are left, probably, as when we talk about the sciences, the nearsightedness. Because of the perspectival myopia, we are left nearsighted, and we are unable to see our experience, even if it is a failure, in a larger dimension, in a larger angle. So that is something very, very important. So now we go to the next important element of non-violent communication. Yeah. Here, in fact, we will talk about this in a detailed way, that is understanding self and constructive self-talk and inner dialogue. Let us quickly go to the next, number 3rd slide, because what we will try to do, what we will try to look at is that, let me tell you, all these elements of non-violent communication are actually interconnected. They're not in self-compartmental. Everything is interconnected, and if we put the threads all together, we will see that it will help us a holistic understanding of how our non-violent communication ecosystem will be. The 3rd extremely important aspect of non-violent communication: use of appropriate and positive language, and expansion of our emotional vocabulary. Because so important, as I told you, that we need to reframe the way we have been talking. And here it's so important, appropriate and positive language. Because if we are always using negative languages, if you are always using negativity in what we are trying to say, then it and understand needs of ours. If our emotional vocabulary is expanded, we will be able to handle situations better. So it's so important our emotional, we are able to expand our emotional vocabulary. In fact, also that entails how we can expand our emotional understanding and knowledge, because that is something, it will help us to communicate in a positive manner with people around us, and also handle, difficult situations. Number fourth, Gulshan. Hello, Gulshan. Can you hear me? We continue. Hello. Yeah, Gulshan.
Yes, sir. Next.
Hello. Yes, yes, yes. No, just let us share the quote of Archbishop Desmond Tutu. Because that is something very, very useful
Everything is
quotation.
fine.
Okay, okay, okay. So let us go to the next important slide, important aspect of non-violent communication, that is avoidance of stereotypes. Avoiding, you see, friends, whether in whichever part of the world we are, here is this beautiful quote for you, friends. Language is very powerful. This is Archbishop Desmond Tutu. Language is very powerful. Language does not describe quality, does not just describe quality, sorry. Language creates the reality it describes. We should try to take responsibility of our actions, words, and feelings, and not blame others for it. Such an important aspect of it, such an important issue that we need to look at it. So we go to the next important slide, that is the stereotype, avoidance of stereotypes. As I was telling you, friends, all of us get, most of us are, across the world we find that we get into the trap of stereotyping. Something which, say for instance, persons with disabilities, in many parts of the world, people with disabilities are excluded from the mainstream. And there are different type of words, different type of labels that are given to the stereotypes, or say people who are homeless. So there are different types and stereotypes that are linked to different groups of people, labels that are there in different types of people. So non-violent communication and tells us how we can avoid the stereotypes. That is something very, very critical. And also when we are ourselves, when we are talking, even when we are talking to ourselves, the self-talk or even the inner dialogue that are there, we more than often get entrapped in these stereotyping. So that is a challenge for all of us on how to avoid it. Now we go to the next slide, please. That is power of empathy. Again, extremely important. In fact, the former American president, Dr. Barack Obama, he had a beautiful quote to say when Barack Obama said that actually there is a deficit, empathy deficit in the world. When he said that there is an empathy deficit in the world, why there is empathy deficit in the world? Because most of us are all attuned to in such a situation that we are not understanding the problems of the others. We don't want to put ourselves into the, shoes of the other person to get into the situation, to understand their concerns. The empathy is an extremely important thing. As you are all students of psychology, you might know that there are so many psychological studies that has been done, as the empathy is directly related to the neurosciences of the brain. And the more empathetic we are, then there is a greater chance that we are less stressful and we might be more happy. We might be having a greater pro-social behavior. So power of empathy is something which is needed to be cultivated. And here I'm saying it is not just for people when we are looking at the other person, the putting ourselves on the shoes of the others. What is important is also to cultivate self-empathy. Unless and until we cultivate self-empathy, because sometimes we find ourselves in difficult situations, and how we can come out of it, wriggle out of it, is something always a challenge for us. So if we are self-empathetic, then it becomes much easier to handle that particular situation. Now we go to the next important element of nonviolent communication. Next slide, please. Again, we have talked about compassion. The importance of compassion already we have discussed. And here again, I want to underline, we are talking of compassion not just for human beings, but also for nature and other living beings. That is the importance of compassion. Now, we go to the next important element of non-violent communication: flexibility and openness in our communication process. Friends, many times we find ourselves in having a differences of opinion with different people. If we are, there is always a chance in those situations for a communication breakdown. These are the obstacles to communication. We see from the examples of many of these great leaders across the world who have been working for peace, and the peace apostles that we learn. If we are flexible and if we are open in our communication, then we keep the channels of communication open, continue the channels of communication open, so that there is no breakdown of communication. So that is an extremely critical element of nonviolent communication. Please go to the next slide, please. Next slide, please. Yeah. Then the other extremely important element of nonviolent communication is expression of gratitude. Extremely important for us to know. Again, the expressions of gratitude is linked. Several psychological studies have been done which suggest that the more we express gratitude, the less stressful we are. In fact, friends, gratitude is the elevation of enjoyment. And it is one of the key dimensions in the definition of joy. The more we feel that we need to be joy and happy, then it is an extremely important dimension. And gratitude is the recognition of all that holds us in the wave of life, and all that has made it possible to have the life that we have, and the moment that we are expressing. Thanksgiving, we all know, and all of you are coming from different backgrounds, and all of you are very, very well aware of this important aspect of Thanksgiving, gratitude. And it's a natural response to life, and maybe the only way to savor it. And expressions of gratitude, actually, when we express gratitude, it helps us to move away from the narrow-minded focus on fault and lack of it, and it takes us to the wider perspective of benefits of the society. And it is gratefulness which also makes us happy. So extremely important element of non-violent communication. So now we go to the next slide, please. This is and the second last important element of nonviolent communication is connecting with needs of others. Extremely important. Say, for instance, you are having a problem or a fight with a friend of yours. So it is very easy for us to fight back, to be aggressive. But can you ever think that for a moment, try to unearth what was that particular need of that friend of yours, because of which she or he is behaving in that particular manner, connecting with the needs of others. There could be some problems, there could be some issues which we are not able to understand, because of which she or she is talking to you like that, or the attitude of that person is because of that. But when we are able to unearth that particular needs of that person, on why that person is behaving that, then it's much easier to resolve that problem, much easier to resolve that issue or difference with that particular person. So that is an extremely important aspect of non-violent communication. Please come to the next slide, please. And that is the last important element of non-violent communication, and that is active and deep listening. Friends, very, very critical element, because listening, as we know, is the growth activity that requires practice. In fact, in today's world, there is so much of situation where we are not, listening to the others properly. So it is a growth. It is an activity. It helps us to grow, but it requires practice. And also, when we are able to listen to the other person deeply, silence and try to listen to the other person deeply, then we are able to, change our attitudes towards those who are present, and we will become non-judgmental in concluding what they're trying to say or trying to articulate. So that is something very, very important. Listening. In fact, when we are a deep listener, then it actually helps us to transform people's attitude towards themselves and others. And also, it brings changes in their fundamental values and beliefs, friends. Also, when we are, it's so important. Just think of a situation when you are trying to talk to someone and you realize that person is not even listening to you. Then you feel hurt. You will feel demotivated. Same thing for the other person. The other person is talking to you, and and you are not listening to him or her. So what would the other person think? Actually, when we are listening, developing the idea of listening, it will be able to help us to, understand the other person in a much better way. The other person will feel that he or she is respected, and that helps in developing bonds, that helps in strengthening bonds. Now we go to the next important element here, because now we are in the last 5 minutes, we are going to talk on 5 to 7 minutes, we are finally going to talk on all these elements coming together in our understanding of the self. Friends, by now you might have actually tried to look at on the different parameters, different ideas, dimensions of nonviolent communication. And please let us remember that each of these elements are critical in our understanding of the self. Because understanding of the self is the key. Let us go to the next slide, please. Understanding the self is the key, and it is the foundation for our growth, because that is something extremely important. Here, we must always remember that when we are talking about understanding the self in the context of this, how we can come and use all these ideas there. Here, as I told you, when we are talking about our thought processes, let us remember that when our thoughts are negative or violent in nature, so have you ever realized, and as you're all mostly students of psychology, that we use this specific term called the cognitive distortion. No, when there is a negative thoughts within us, it can be seen as cognitive distortions. And these are the ways in which our mind convinces us that there is something is real when there isn't. Like there is some issue that is happening, and that is actually, you start thinking that that has really happened to you, whether in reality it is not. So actually, when we are talking of cognitive distortions, it reinforces the negative thoughts by making us believe that negativity is true. And that is always something very, very important to remember. Now, what we are trying to do, what we will try to focus on, is on the idea of self-discovery, and also on the idea of how we can look at the different aspects of the self. Just 1 second, please. Yeah. Fine. Now, what we are trying to do is looking at the different aspects of this non-violent communication with that, and we were talking about the how understanding the self is the foundation for the understanding the our growth. In this context, let us first talk about the importance of self-discovery. Here, let me share with you, friend, an very interesting quote of Paulo Coelho, because that is something very important when we are talking of self-discovery, the importance of self-discovery. Probably many of you might have read about it. This beautiful quote by Paulo Coelho. He says that sometimes the warrior feels as if he was living two lives at once. There is a bridge that links what I do with what I like to do, he thinks. Slowly, his dreams take over his everyday life, and then he realizes that he's ready for the thing he always wanted. Then all that is needed is a little daring, and his two lives become one. It is something an everyday situation. The whole idea of self-discovery. We are always in the process of self-discovery. In fact, if there is one thing that is there is the foundation for growth. We can only grow when we are constantly trying to rediscover ourselves, when we are trying to constantly see how we are able to look at different situations together. Next slide, please. It is an ongoing evolution. That's what I say. It is an ongoing evolution. Now we come to the next. What is now we are looking at the whole idea of self-talk and internal dialogue. That's something we need to look at. And yeah, let me have just a little sip of water. Just 1 second. Yeah. So to find our purpose of life, we must go on the journey, as I said, of self-discovery. In fact, self-discovery is simply, as I can tell you, it is not a one-time event it is basically, as I mentioned in the slide, it is actually an ongoing evolution. And as life goes on, we try to discover how much we are capable of achieving. So we have to, as individuals, we have to unwrap multiple layers, isn't it? Before we try to unearth our true potential, discover on who we are, and try to discover the different layers. When we start discovering the multiple layers that are there within us, we will try to start to uncover that. And with every layer we start to uncover, and with every layer we come up with something new, things that are there within hidden within us. In fact, we have been doing this workshop for a long time, and when we have this particular session, friends, I'm sure you all must be knowing about the Johari window. We try to use the Johari window as an exercise for our participants to try to unearth something which are hidden within us. So now we come to this extremely critical element of what we call as the self-talk and internal dialogue. I'm sure every one of you know the difference between self-talk and internal dialogue. Self-talk, as we know, all of us know, it is something which is we are talking to oneself, and it can be as it is something, a single word or a single sentence we are trying to talk to ourselves. Whereas when we are talking of the internal dialogue, it is something, we are talking to the different people. Like as I told, self-talk is a self-directed or self-referent speech, as we know by the definition. Whereas internal dialogue activities, when we are engaging in dialogues with different figures, it could be my friend, it could be anyone, say my parents or teachers or anyone. It is within ourselves. We are engaging in dialogue. That is what we call as internal dialogical activity. And again, when we talk of self-talk, it can be a single word, as I said, or it can be a single comment. Whereas whereas the internal dialogue is something which is having dialogues with different people we can imagine to be. Here now, that is important when we already talked about those elements of nonviolent communication. So if our self-talk or internal dialogue is negative, if it is not healthy, if it is problematic, if it is aggressive, then we will become very, very angry. We will have a lot of problems. And that is something which is a big issue. So what is important is that how we learn the art of assimilating those elements of nonviolent communication in our self-talk and internal dialogue, so that we are at calm with each ourselves, we are at peace within ourselves, and we are not getting angry in that way, and we are able to control our anger. As human beings, we all can be angry. We will be able to control our emotions in a much better way, and we will be able to handle our relationship in a much better way. In fact, there is this beautiful there is this apt which you all must have studied, the dialogical self theory of Hermans of 1996, where he says that human consciousness functions as a similar society of mind containing mental representations of numerous voices of culture, family, makes, close friends, significant others, and other sources. These voices can engage in a variety of communication, including posing questions and answers to, and having the agreements and disagreements with each other. And friends, here comes the importance of nonviolent communication. When, as if our consciousness, if our thinking process is like a society of mind, if there is so much of aggressiveness, then as I told you, there will be real problems. So that is something we need to look at when we are talking of that. Let us go to the next slide, please. So already I have talked to you a lot about those aspect of self-talk, and this is what I just talked about, the dialogical self theory. We could go to the next slide. We have already discussed about it. Next slide, please. Now, what is important is that now we are talking about the important aspect of looking at something which is important. We have talked about the last important element of nonviolent communication, listening. I would like to end this presentation with that underlining importance of listening to oneself, because that is an extremely important and critical element of being able to handle situations, of being calm, of being peace within oneself. In fact, we can listen to another person and understand their sufferings if we first look deeply within ourselves, if we do our deep self-listening. And then we will be able to make peace with our own fears and worries. And then we will be able to see the different situations in a much better way and understand the root of the problem. Now, that this brings us to the insight that can transform and heal. The process of going home and making peace inside is critical to be able to offer love to another person. Here I'm talking about when we are at peace within ourselves, when we are able to listen to ourselves deeply with understanding ourselves, we will be able to offer love and kindness to the other person. In fact, we have to be compassionate. We are again coming back to that importance of self-compassion. We have to be compassionate to ourselves in order to see that we do not get angry when we listen to the other person, because possibly the other person must be might be using words that are not very good and conducive, very hurtful words. But if we are self-compassionate, if we are self-empathetic, we may not be getting angry in that way, and we will be able to listen to the other person and let us go back understanding the needs of the other person. We will be able to connect with the needs of those other persons, and because of that we will be able to be in a much better way in trying to understand their situation and not being will be non-judgmental. We will not be judgmental in that situation. So in fact, if we are not nourishing compassion within ourselves, we are not able to listening to ourselves properly, then it becomes problematic. If we are compassionate to ourselves, it will protect us from the anger. And in fact, I can tell you, compassion is the antidote of anger. With compassion, we can relate to the other people. Without compassion, we are cut off, actually. So, here again, I want to underline, if we are able to master the art of listening deeply and with compassion, we can open the heart of another person. If we know, if we are able to understand how to convey our feelings that are inside us through a speech that is nonviolent in nature, we can help the other person understand us. Very critical point, because if we are using nonviolent communication, we will be able to make the other person listen to us, and we will be able to re-establish communication. Just imagine we had a fight with someone, so we will be able to re-establish communication with that particular person. And these are something which is a very, very important aspect, again, as I underline, compassionate listening and the language of nonviolent communication. So friends, these are some of the points that I thought I would like to share with you in this presentation. And I end this presentation with this beautiful quote of Martin Luther King: we must learn to live together as brothers, or we will perish together as fools. So thank you very much. I hope some of these points made sense to you. Probably it would help you in getting new ideas and reflections within on how we can use these elements of nonviolent communication in greater understanding of the self, and also most importantly, when we are able to communicate with others, with the outside world. And again, I underline, not just other human fellow beings, but when we communicate with other living beings and also the nature. So now if we can have some question and answer sessions, so you're most requested to share. And also I may now give the mic to Madam Teresita. Thank you. Hello, please.
Can I ask a question?
Any questions?
I have a question po. Can I ask?
Krishanji,
Any questions or any reflections, any thoughts on this?
Hello, sir. I have a question po, sir. I am
So,
Maika.
yes, Maika. Okay.
I have a question po, ma'am.
Yes, please.
Sir said a while ago about yung elements about um non-violent communication and how to avoid a violence while communicating with other people. So my question po, ma'am, is how about those people who's rate rate na sa ilahang self, like for
Yes.
example terrorists po. How can we approach them or communicate with them non-violently if all they do to us is broad atrocities?
Yes, please. Can probably, because I think there is a bit problem with the voice. Can Teresita, if you could please, tell the question again, because it seems there was a little problem with the voice of
Okay,
the particular student.
maybe it is related also with this chat box, that what if the other side refuses to engage in communication,
Okay,
or
that's right.
yeah.
That is an extremely pertinent question, because many times, say for instance, we have a probably a tiff off with someone, or there is a conflict that is going on. So that is an important element of how I told you, one of the important element of nonviolent communication was flexibility and openness in our communication, and how to keep on ensuring that even if we are having serious differences with the other side, how we continue to open the channels of communication, because if we close the channel of communication, then there is complete breakdown of communication. There is an obstacle. It is possible the other side might be stubborn. It is possible the other side might be completely aggressive with us. But you see, it is a very, very, a process which takes time. You see, the whole thing, if you are say in a the whole relationship or the whole thing will finish off, because if the other side says no, I will not talk, you will also say that that's the end of it. So then that becomes, if we are seriously interested that we need to resolve that particular conflict in a win-win situation, that's what we see talk in the modern terminology of non-violent conflict resolution. So in that case, ensuring the channel of communication to be open, to be flexible, to be patient and perseverance is extremely important. And here comes the importance of non-violent communication. As I told you right in the beginning, say for instance, reframing of how we are able to handle that particular person. Possibly it will need a lot of practice to reframe from the way we have been using the different, our communication process. But probably if we are able to reframe the way we are speaking, it is possible the other side might still be able to, might still be able to engage in the communication, because there is nothing in the world, we as human beings, as there is, as science says, that we are essentially non-violent in nature. Violence and aggressiveness are something which are called and learned behavior. So there is nothing that it is, we have to try our very best using different techniques, as I told you, reframe the way we have been using, talking to get and engage with the other side. Yes, please. Will that, is that suffice, or you want further explanation to that? Yes, someone else has said it. How can non-violent communication be applied in this pandemic? What is the impact of non-violent communication to anyone? Can you give us an example of an approach as non-violent communication? Well, the first question, how can non-violent communication be applied in this pandemic? In fact, we've been having several these kind of interactions with students and people across the world on the essence of non-violent communication, especially during this pandemic. So I would like to tell you point-wise. In fact, when we were on the phase of lockdown and all of us were at home, we had this first session with students of a law university, and that was exactly the same question. When that student said that, you see, we are a group, say 6-7 people in a household, and my father, mother, and brothers and sisters, and we have always been going out and coming back in the evening and from our studies or work, etc., etc. The biggest problem that we are facing in the lockdown is because of the lack of space for each other. We are seeing each other all the time. We are, and that is really bringing a stress in the relationship. So when we try to explore the different elements of nonviolent communication, say for instance, compassion, empathy, because more than ever before, these elements are so important. Expression of gratitude, possibly someone might have done something for us even in this pandemic. That's very important. So these elements, when we try to practice, it will help us get over with the, the real problematic communication problem that we might be facing in this, pandemic. The stressful relationship that we might have in this pandemic. One example that I would like to give in this situation is that we are all using the social media, and more than often I have seen in this, during this pandemic, that there is a feeling of solidarity. Because when we are talking of solidarity, that you're using different forms of non-violent communication. I remember at the initial phase, one of our friends from Madagascar, she wrote and expressing real concern on how I was and my family and how things were in my country. And she said that I will like to pray with you so that we can get over with this pandemic situation the worldwide. So that is something very, very important. So during this pandemic, it's more than ever before important. So the next question was that what is the impact of non-violent communication to anyone? Extremely important. When we are using non-violent communication, as I've shown there, as we tried to underline, it will impact all of us. We will be able to develop a non-violent communication ecosystem, not just between ourselves, but with others. So in that way, we will be able to develop better relationships, and we will be able to strengthen relationships and also build bridges of emotional understanding with different people. That is an important aspect and benefit of nonviolent communication. It will help us to get over with our problems in a much better way. Can you give us an example of an approach as nonviolent communication? Well, I always believe that when we are trying to use the tools and strategies of nonviolent communication, what I have seen is that it helps make the other person virtually, defenseless. I will tell you an example which I number of times share with all of us. That is basically, say for instance, where is that? Yeah. Example of an approach as nonviolent communication. Say for instance, you are in a house and your brother is basically, you're in a lockdown situation. I will try to relate it with the pandemic. Say you are in a lockdown situation and basically you are cleaning the house, and your brother or sister, whosoever may be, he or she is sleeping in the sofa and not helping you in cleaning the house. In general, most of the time, what is the language that we use? You say, "Hey, you lazy bum, you are not able to do anything. I have to do all the things. You go blah 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 blah." But when we are practicing non-violent communication, is basically reframing. So here you might say, "Well, my brother, or well, my sister, I know you have been working late night yesterday for your office, and you feel a little tired. And I'm sure the next time I'm again cleaning the house, you will definitely come and help me." You see the difference that will make in that person. That person is most likely to come and might say that, "Well, I'm really feeling tired. Can I help you the next day?" Or probably that person could come and help you and join hands with you. There are all these possibilities. Whereas if you say, "Hey, you lazy bum," and all, and that could actually trigger a conflict with your brother or sister. This is an example how it is very, very useful in bringing people together and engagement with people. Next, another question I'm seeing among the 5 pillars. One second. Among the 5 pillars of Gandhian non-violence, is there any aspect of it, compassion? That is more important than the other, or are they all equal significantly? All these aspects of communication, all these aspects of non-violence are important together, because all of them are interconnected. Respect, understanding, acceptance, appreciation, compassion. If you don't respect me, then it is possible that I may not be able to respect you in that way. And if we don't respect each other, then there is a possibility that we may not understand each other. And if we don't understand each other, then there is a possibility that I don't accept your positions or point of views. So you see, each and every, all these elements or pillars are extremely interconnected to each other and have equal importance. Appreciation, I have told you in details, and so is compassion. So all are interconnected and all are equally important significantly. Okay, if the communication engagement, however, non-violent, isn't going anywhere because one second, there is another question that has come. If the communication engagement, however non-violent, isn't going anywhere because the beliefs are totally different, which couldn't be fixed short term, when do you know to leave that communication to avoid further strain to the relationship? Well, this is an important question to be dealt with, because it is possible sometimes in our life that we might find ourselves in a situation that we can't get over with one second. Where is that question? Okay. Yeah. So in that situation, which couldn't be fixed short term, when do we know to leave that communication to avoid further strain in the relationship? Well, friend, in our lives, we might come across situations where we feel that is the end of the whole situation. the whole, the entire communication process has come to completely frozen. We can't go further. And if we go further, because what is also important is ensure that we don't compromise with our self-respect and dignity. And also at the same time, we don't do a thing which will see that the dignity of the other person is compromised. So definitely there could be a situation where we might be have to, even with our best of efforts, because nothing is utopian in today's world. Like nothing, if we say that everything can be solved with non-violent communication, that is utopian. So definitely certain times we might have to find ourselves in a difficult position where we may not be able to go further in that situation. Then there is some question. A bill just turned into a law right now in the Philippines. Some are protesting back then that it should be junked, and some are actually supporting the said bill. It caused a destruction and misinformation to the whole nation. May I hear your insight about this, sir? Thank you. Well, actually, friend, since I don't know much about the law and all, probably your Madam Teresita could be in a best position to answer this particular question. So then there is how to convince someone to be positive or gain compassion if his experience is distracting him to be positive or be compassionate, because some people become violent due to their experience. Definitely. When we are talking about understanding self, the self-talk and also the inner dialogues, there we need to understand ourselves and unearth those multiple layers. That is something very, very important, because if we are not able to, and the last points that I in my presentation, when I told, when we are angry, when we are if you want, I will try to just read that paragraph once again. We have to be very compassionate in order not to get angry when we listen to the other person, because their speech may be full of condemnation, blame, judgmental, and so on. In fact, if we don't nourish compassion in ourselves, we cannot listen for very long. And as I told you, more compassionate we are, that will help us protect us from that anger. And that is why compassion, as I told you, I feel that compassion is the antidote to anger. And we will be able to relate to the other person. That is something very important. Then how to convince someone, that is again there. Now you have discussed the connection of intrapersonal communication to cognitive disruptions. In regard to this, I'm struck with this question. Does decision making contribute to violent communication, since it somehow build conflict? Friend, can you be more clearer in this question? There was, I think there is some, I'm not getting it. If you could be clearer in that question, we can have a further talk in that. There is something.
Excuse me, sir. Can we accommodate around 2 questions, because it's already, we stretch more on the time. It's almost 8 o'clock.
That's right. That's right. So you, madam, why don't you tell 2 questions so that we accommodate those last 2 questions?
Maybe from no. Wait.
There is one last question I am saying. Can you give an example on how to communicate with people who had different ideals with you, who has different ideals with you, especially if their ideals will bring harm to our fellow human beings? Well, friend, here it's so important to understand that, as I told you, inherently we are all non-violent in nature. So we must see the goodness in people. So if there is someone who is having a different ideal, or someone who is wanting to create problems, the challenge is to use different strategies of non-violent communication on how we can engage with that particular person. Because howsoever violent, because again, let us go back, connecting to the needs of the other people. There could be some needs of it which are not being fulfilled, and because of that, he or she might be behaving in that way. Experiences suggest that if we learn the art of connecting with needs of the others, it becomes much easier. It becomes crystal clear why that person is behaving in that way, and we can respond in that context with that particular person. So I feel that once we are able to connect with the needs of the other person, then it becomes much easier to help possibly that person in that situation. Yes, madam, any other question?
Okay. As Dr. Kundo, thank you very much for this very fruitful sharing that we have. And I think there are lots of questions to be asked by the students, but maybe I can share with them the articles on nonviolent communication so that they can
Definitely.
review also with their own.
Also, madam, I would,
Hello.
as 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 you did the course, you can motivate your students also to do that free online course on
Yeah.
nonviolent
Yeah.
communication. Yes. Hmm.
Yes.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yes, that's right. Yes, yes. That's right.
Okay, so a few things. Take note that communication can develop or destroy relationship. So there is interconnectedness between thoughts, feelings, and actions. And we need these strategies like reframing, and we have these pillars and the elements of a nonviolent communication. So with this limited time that we have, we need more to practice about this nonviolent communication.